and how we might raise multi-year funding. So we're going to start with Chacha, and if you see in your chat, we also have a presentation from NCA on Engage, which is Enhancing Girls' Agency and Gender Equality. And this is one of the presentations that was pending from when we had a core member meeting in person in Geneva, and we had asked if people would be able to present instead on these calls where we have a much larger audience. So great that we can offer this to all of you. And then we're going to hear an update on Haiti from our coordinator there, Blandine. And we did have an update on Haiti 2 months ago on our on a past call. But the focus this time is going to be more on what's happening with women-led organizations in Haiti. And also, we know that the situation in Haiti is quite critical, but it's not making it into the media, at least not into a lot of the media. I mean, I don't know if it's more in the US since it's closer to Haiti, but definitely we don't hear much about it in Europe or other parts of the world, since we know right now a lot of focus, and obviously for needed reasons, on Gaza. And also, of course, we know that Sudan is also in a critical situation. There's lots of critical situations, but on this call, we're going to give an update on Haiti. And then we have asked Anna Tazita, who is the new organization that will be co-coordinating. They have been co-coordinating at the subnational level, but now will be co-coordinating in South Sudan. And Anna Tazita came to Geneva to the HNPW, which is the Humanitarian, I'm going to have to spell this, Humanitarian Network and Partnership Week. And she presented at 2 different, if not 3, localization workshops. And so I have invited her to come and give her impressions of the HNPW from a women-led organization perspective. So that's our agenda. And if there's any time left, we'll do an AOB if there's anything that people want to raise on the call. So we're going to start off with Chacha, and I will hand over to you, Chacha. Chacha, it's over to you. If you are speaking, you need to turn your microphone. Yep.
Yes, I was muted and was just quickly unmuting. So thank you very much, Jennifer and colleagues. Good morning, good afternoon, and I think from different parts of the world. I will take advantage of this opportunity to quickly relay that as a country, we have had we are entering the 4th year of crisis, different parts of the country. After the 2 years of the Tigray one, there has been other sprouting crises in different parts of the country. The biggest at the moment is the one happening in Amhara region, which is the region neighboring, immediately neighboring Tigray. And just before it could recover, or we could go into the recovery processes from the Tigray war, now we have an internal conflict within Amhara. It is also good for me to quickly also mention that aside from just focusing on the 3 regions in the north because of the Tigray crisis, now the scale-up, system-wide scale-up has actually adopted a country-wide approach, one. So the geographic scope has gone from 3 regions to 14 regions, which is the entire country. And secondly, we have gone from just conflict to include the climate shocks as well, the drought, flooding, as well as disease outbreak that have been happening in the different parts of the country. I think after saying this, allow me to go into the next slide. These are the 3 pillars that underpin the work of the GBV AoR in the country. I'll not go through them. We have mainly the partnership and coordination response itself, as well as the data and information management. These are the core three that we work on or guide the work that we do in the country. Next slide. We also have key highlights, essentially UNFPA. We are the cluster lead agency in the country. We are co-leading at the federal or national level with the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs. The Director of Gender, Women Rights and Protection is the person who is co-leading with myself at the national level. And then at the regional level in 8 regions where we have active coordination mechanisms activated, we are co-leading with the regional bureaus of women affairs, which are basically the regional level offices. For those who know Ethiopia as a federal system, the different regions are states. They are regional states, so they have regional governments that are running affairs in those particular regions, and therefore the regional bureaus are like the ministries at regional level. Overall, we have 76 partners who are reporting. I only count the ones who are reporting response services throughout the country. 52% are INGOs, 40% are national NGOs, 8% are UN agencies, and then we have another 2%, which is a mix of government as well as some of the donors. We have donors who have active presence in the AoR day to day, and there are those who also participate from time to time. We are reporting from 991 sites across the country, 383 districts, which are basically what we locally call Wareda, and then 14 regions overall. We have our response mechanism is through one-stop centers as one of them. 78 of them are there in the country. We have 814 health facilities, 22 safe houses, 95 women and girl-friendly spaces, 61 maternity waiting homes, 60 mobile health and nutrition teams, which are basically supported by the respective response partners to deliver an integrated GBV and SRH services. We have recently, actually on April 16 this year, launched the first national GBV SOP that is overarching for development and humanitarian settings, really looking at working with the government to adapt national policy frameworks to humanitarian response. And now the national GBV policy, which was concluded earlier than the SOP, has been brought up again with quite a number of comments, and the intention is to expand it beyond just GBV, and this conversation maybe in another meeting we will update on that one. For now, it's only the SOP that has gone through. Next, please. So essentially, when it comes to the subject of today, colleagues, our biggest opportunity came when we had the chance to revise the 9th country program, 2020-2025. The reason I call it an opportunity is because in 2020, end of 2020, beginning of 2021, the country went into a crisis, and there was an opportunity to relook at a more small window was open to relook at the country program and document and revise it according to the situation that was ongoing in the country. At that point in time, we had the opportunity to ensure that we insert a whole dedicated output indicator on strengthening interagency gender-based violence coordination mechanisms at the federal and national level. This was strategic for us because it gives the opportunity, as we know, the country program is usually where resources are allocated, is where the mainstreaming of certain actions at country level are assured. So we knew that with this opportunity, having it within that country program would provide the opportunity that even if we can't mobilize resources outside, then the core resources will definitely be allocated to support the GBV coordination mechanisms, because the previous one only had response and it was mostly related to development programming. I have have put a small don't wait to be invited in quotes there deliberately, because it was a battle to even get this output in there. There's the tradition of assuming that the country program is to do development work. Why are we writing these are temporary things? But we now see the importance of why finally having it there, it has made a big difference in terms of us being able to mobilize resources internally, but also whenever the country is looking for any resources, then the AoR and the interagency work must be one of the objectives that they are sailing through. Next slide. So in one of our first things was we were asked to show how we will make sure that these resources or the AoR is resourced moving forward. So one of the things we committed to as a team working in the country was to have the assessment, the continuous assessments of needs and priorities. And we had about 6 products that we promised, and we have consistently continued to ensure that they are updated to support the resource mobilization efforts. Having the standalone GBV intersectoral and intersectoral assessment, safety audits, we have a dedicated folder. The link is provided there. Feel free to visit and see. So as we do the assessments as an AoR, as partners, as we do them part of the multi-sectoral or the rapid needs assessment, we ensure that that folder is updated. And then from time to time, we share it with the donors to say we have new assessments that are defining the situation in the country. Please feel free to visit and have a look. And whenever you have follow-up questions, the donors would call to really find out what exactly does this mean, what are these findings, what are you doing with these findings. The secondary data review as well, we promised that, and we've been doing it consistently to make sure that this is updated. The annual reports, that is also being done, and there's a dedicated folder for it. The annual performance review retreat. These are part of the funding interventions that the different partners I will talk about later have been funding. So we have a modality where we have biannual regional review meetings or regional review retreats. So each region has a half-annual, half-year review. And then we have one annual retreat that all the regions come together at the national level, and then we review our performance for the whole year to look at how has the response generally performed for that particular year. And we usually will invite the donors on one of those days to be able to listen in on our performance and ask questions, interact with the partners who are delivering the response in the different parts. And this has contributed a significant part of how we end up getting resources and attention from the different donors, and even how they speak about the response moving within their circles. I have also mentioned the needs assessment report. This is a dedicated exercise where we look at what are the needs based on the individual partners, the response capacity particularly, and not just general assessments, but response capacity depending on which part of the response the different partners are working. It is yet to be updated because we have collected data for the 2023, and we will be updating that particular one. And then we have the overall GBV AoR performance monitoring dashboard. That one is up to date, and please feel free to look at it. Next slide. We also have resourcing of stakeholder engagement from that point, looking at collaborating with the government agencies, NGOs, UN agencies, and other relevant partners on resource mobilization efforts, advocating for increased funding and support from donors, both local and international. And 3 main things that we have actually been able to accomplish that I can provide as examples are as part of the 16 days of activism in December last year, on the 6th of December, we were able to collaborate with the Spanish Corporation, the Embassy of Sweden, Embassy of Ireland, the EU delegation here, the German Embassy, Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, UNPA and UN Women, to be able to put together a high-level panel in which we brought the voices from the regions, brought the voices from the field, the women associations from Tigray and the women association from Amhara, as well as the one-stop center staff who are working in Amhara, and one of the women and girl-friendly spaces in Tigray were invited to provide the voices from the field so that it can give a backdrop towards setting the stage for the conversation in the roundtable. There were 12 ambassadors who attended in person, and quite interesting commitments came out of there, some of which include the Global Affairs Canada, which has just recently, as last week, approved the 7-year funding that I will mention in detail later. So then we also have routine individual donor briefs and meetings. If you see that link there, this was a link to the different briefs that we do with the donors. We've had a very extensive one with ECHO recently, who we then agreed that instead of funding, for example, UNFPA or the UN agencies, this money goes direct, or their funding goes directly to the frontline response partners, the NGOs, the INGOs, CSOs, to be able to deliver the response and expand and scale up our response. We also have had quite a number of donor field visits, some of those which are directly planned by the AoR itself, particularly the Canada one, the ones for Sweden, the one for Koika, and then there are those others which we then join as part of the response to join UNFPA, UNHCR when they bring in or invite in donors, like the UNHCR one 2 weeks ago. They were the UNHCR global donors had come for their biannual country visits to see their projects, and we had the opportunity to join as part of the protection cluster to really showcase the work that is being done, and that always presents an opportunity to give the challenges and to highlight the gaps that are still holding the response down. Next. The other important part of our work has been to really push on advocacy and awareness, the GBV and its impact. One of the key things that we have learned from this response over the last 2 years from 2021 has been that most of the survivors that we are seeing in the different service points are also featuring with complications that go beyond the traditional GBV complications that we see. So, for example, if you have an opportunity to be here, you will see in one-stop centers like Adigrat, which is in Tigray, there is the other one in Dese. They have now been able to document quite a number of other foreign objects that have been found by just going an extra step and doing an ultrasound scan on the survivors. They find foreign objects that were, left as part of the unfortunate incidences and violations of GBV that they may have undergone during the crisis. So this in itself has helped us, one, to be able to alter and make sure that our response includes a more multi-sectoral approach, but also as we present the situation and the urgency of the response, we are being very multi-sectoral in presenting it so that the magnitude is understood to the extent that can also support work. Part of that has also brought in significant funding in the area of fistula response, as well as response to the prolapse of intrauterine products for some of the survivors. So this has been a big part of it. As part of the AoR routine, now we have a routine briefing with the country representative, and just 1 month now we have had the HCT has created a dedicated HCT session where CLAs, the cluster lead agencies, are presenting on their clusters. So our representative here at UNFPA usually will have to prepare for him a briefing, and then usually they would present among themselves as cluster leads to look at how they specifically address the situation there. Jennifer and colleagues, and I want to take opportunity to thank you also for the support with the Amhara, highlighting the Amhara GBV situation. That was one of the reasons why the CLA briefing has been been created as part of the HCT to avoid that they don't bring it to the overall HCT because the agenda is crowded. Then now they have that dedicated session where they see only the cluster lead agencies leading the 11 clusters come together and have very strict conversations around thematic areas related to their leadership. And during that meeting, it was the case for GBV, the magnitude, the situation, the gaps, the needs, the funding levels, and all these were really highlighted. And we are happy that the new RC was actually convinced to really create and activate that CLA. And that has been quite positive. We have seen EHF funding coming through because of that. We have seen SAF funding now being increased because of that. And now HCR is actually supposed to do the protection analysis updates regularly. The situation briefs we are doing very regularly as well. Talking points at every meeting. You remember also during the pledging event in Geneva with your support and the support of the team at HQ, also we were able to prepare talking points for AMIS to be able to present and make a case for us. I'm happy for me to mention that also has culminated in the USAID coming through with their pledge and saying that the pledge they made of, I think, $145 million, they want to put at least 100 million of it will go for protection response in Ethiopia. And then the 45 can be shared by other clusters. And we have been doing quite a bit of follow-up work, reprioritization to absorb that additional funding. And as the things unfold, we will also update. ICCG and HCT briefs, this I have already mentioned. Next slide. Another big area that we keep looking at is diversifying our funding streams. And here, allow me to mention very quickly, being able to explore various funding mechanisms has brought us to one of the points that I start with, which is leveraging resources. This is the only one of those few countries where the national government goes to the UN, and particularly coming to UNFPA, for example, to ask for that we take funding to deliver the work that they have been funded to do. I'll say that again. The World Bank 2 years ago signed an over $300 million project with the government of Ethiopia, specifically the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs. And part of that money was given to UNFPA to deliver a GBV response in Tigray region where the government did not have access. And 2 years of delivering that project and the results that have come out of it. And mind you, there were 3 outcomes. One of those outcomes is the coordination outcome, delivering standard operating procedures, delivering guidelines, delivering SOPs for the one-stop center, safe houses, and other training manuals. This has resulted in us being able now, as we speak this week on yesterday, Monday, actually, we have delivered a concept note with the ministry wanting UNFPA to expand that funding from only Tigray to another 4 regions, because the overall funding was for 5 regions. And now we have been asked to consider expanding the same good work that has been done in Tigray to the other 5 regions, to the other 4 regions, making a total of 5 regions. So resources, including from a government that would be otherwise expecting that the funding goes to them giving funding to us to be able to deliver a response and coordination on their behalf. Embassies have been coming through quite a significant number of times, including the Global Affairs Canada was through the Embassy of Canada and the team working here, the first secretary and her team at the embassy. That's how this came through. We also have been approached by PRM, the Bureau of Populations, PRM, the US, to also extend our work into the refugee settings. And in the meantime, the AoR is supporting with the drafting of the concept and with the activities, generally the proposal, and then a team will be put in place to support that particular work within the refugee settings. We have expanded significantly the country-based pool funding particularly EHF and the SAF, as I earlier mentioned. And now we are seeing dedicated, for example, as we speak, we have about $2 million that has been dedicated in the SAF that was just announced at the end of April, and GBV is allocated specifically $2 million, and that will be going to our GBV Response partners in Amhara, Oromia, and Benishangul Gumuz regions to support scale up GBV response there. UNFPA, WHO, and UNHCR will receive some staff to be able to support the delivery of dignity kits as well as the interagency RH kits, and specifically kit 3 to support the post-rape care treatment and clinical management of rape. So this one of the government, Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, I have already mentioned. Allow me to go to the next slide in the interest of time. So going finally to the proposals.
You're wrapping up, Chacha, because we're over time at this point. Yeah.
Yes, this is the last one. This is the last one, actually. So as you can see, these are the proposals and the applications. The ones in all these are the ones we have delivered, and the green ones are the ones which have been funded. I didn't put the amounts specifically, but for Canada, we had a 3-year running from 2022 to 2024. It has been extended from 2023 to 2030, 7 years, and that brings us to a total of 10 years of funding. And the biggest outcome is GBV response, followed by the coordination outcome, which is out of the 65 million in total. GBV response and coordination, particularly coordination specifically, is getting about 15 million out of it moving forward. So I think this is what I wanted to share, colleagues, this afternoon, and happy to take any questions that may be there, or comments on how we can improve better. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chacha. That's super interesting. And I think I just spoke to somebody from the World Bank, and they do have a bigger team now that works with a humanitarian profile. They now have a team of 9 people in GBV, which is quite impressive. So I think, there are some donors that maybe have shifted their focuses. So it's good to know, and congratulations that you were able to get 7 years commitment for funding. That's unbelievable. So I'm sure there's lots of questions, but unfortunately we're really over time now. So I'm going to ask people to put their questions in the chat, and you can, Chacha, answer in the chat, or we can get back to you at another time. And we do have the coordinator meeting coming up. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to know more about how you're engaging with donors. So if we have time at the end, we can come back with more questions, but I think we really want to make sure we have enough time for our other speakers. So the next session that we have is on Engage, which stands for Enhancing Girls' Agency and Gender Equality, and it's NCA, who is one of the GBV AoR core members, who will be presenting the program for preventing, mitigating, and responding to child, early, and forced marriage. And this is Laura Thackeray. Over to you, Laura.
Thank you, Jennifer. Shiva, were you able to receive the presentation, and do you mind sharing if you have it?
I haven't received it, but let me check.
Oh, did you send it to me?
I sent it to Shiva.
Okay.
Just a second.
Are you able to find it, Shiva, or should we?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, okay.
You have it? Okay.
So I actually have been saying NCA without saying Norwegian Church Aid. So just in case you don't know what NCA stands for. Yes, Norwegian Church Aid. So over to you, Laura. We can see the PowerPoint if you're
You can't see. Can you hear me? Yeah, that's fine. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thanks, Jennifer, and thanks, Shiva. I will try and move quickly because I know we're short on time. So as Jennifer said, my name is Lara Fahouri, and I'm one of the GBV advisors with Norwegian Church Aid at head office, but I'm based in Nairobi. And I'm really happy to finally be able to share our work on Engage, because this is something that we've been working on for a while now. But basically, I'm just going to give a brief overview and introduction to the program, because this is something that we've been working on, and it obviously relates to child early forced marriage. And it was launched last year because that's when we completed our pilot. So it's a new program that looks to prevent and respond to child marriage. It's grounded in a theory of change that was developed from a literature review of existing evidence-based interventions and in consultation with stakeholders, including adolescent girls. Next slide, please. So this is just obviously some background information, but in terms of child marriage around the world as an issue, we know that every year around 12 million girls are married before they turn 18, and that child marriage is a global problem that cuts across countries, cultures, and regions. And we know that it robs girls of their opportunities to thrive. It's a human rights violation. It denies girls their health, education, and the choice of if and when and whom to marry. And more than 650 million women alive today already suffer the direct consequences of child marriage. And basically, in order to end child marriage, it requires a significant amount of investments in programs that tackle the root causes, in particular the social norms that place less value on girls and women when it comes to this. Next slide, please. So this is just a definition of child early forced marriage. Obviously, there is an overlap between the three terms, but I just thought it would be good to have this in case some members were not familiar. But basically, child marriage is a formal or informal union before the age of 18. It is considered a form of forced marriage, as one of both persons have not given their full, free and informed consent due to the lack of physical and psychological maturity to make an informed adult decision. Early marriage is largely the same as child marriage, but can often also refer to marriages or unions in which one or both spouses are 18 or older, but have compromised ability to grant consent. And then forced marriages are marriages in which one and or both parties have not personally expressed their full and free consent to the union, regardless of age. So forced marriage can also refer to a union in which one or both spouses are unable to leave or end the marriage. As I think I've already mentioned, child early forced marriage disproportionately affects women and girls globally. Next slide. And you can keep going through, Jennifer. Sorry, or Shiva. Yeah. So obviously, these are some of the negative consequences of child marriage, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. But we know that it has serious and harmful effects on girls, their families, and their communities, and that basically it violates girls' rights along all of these 4 different areas. So in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of safety and protection, as well as psychosocial health and well-being. Next slide. These are some of the sort of, basically these, the delaying marriage until after the age of 18 has significant positive effects for the girl, for her family, and for her community. So obviously here we highlight a few of them. And basically, if you look at some of these different ones, I mean, from economic benefits, we know that it means that this can economically contribute less dowry, cost of treatment, girl can sorry, that's not written clearly, ignore that one because I'm just reading it without my additional information. But yeah, these are basically some of the 6 positive components. We can go on to the next slide. Okay, in terms of the background to this program. So this started in 2020 with NCA engaging a consultancy team. The consultancy team was brought in to design the draft toolkit, and this was done in consultation with various different stakeholders and included organizations that work with adolescent girls as frontline workers as well. We focused on, obviously, organizations that have CEFM programming. So this was UNICEF at the time, I think CARE and IRC, as well as some others. And a full literature review was conducted, focusing specifically on CEFM within humanitarian programming. A technical advisory group was then established, and this also consisted of some of the stakeholders that work on CEFM. And this was a really useful way, obviously, of getting sort of information and sharing ideas as we progressed. In early 2020, country offices in Iraq and Somalia were basically brought in, and they began facilitating focus group discussions with adolescent girls using some of the materials that were developed by the consultancy team. Then based on this, the consultancy team then sort of developed the tools and etc., and finalized some of them, as well as some of the M&E tools. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But basically, the reason and sort of the main purpose for Engage was that there were some specific gaps that were identified within CEFM prevention and response. And the idea was that Engage would aim to fill some of these. And that was life skills specifically for adolescent boys, information for caregivers, particularly those that were married, and then engaging community members such as teachers, religious leaders, noting the roles that they play when it comes to changing social norms. And then obviously we saw that there was an importance when it comes to really rigorous capacity building of staff on CEFM, that a lot of investment needs to be made on sort of intensive training, let's say, especially because of the link to sort of social norms change as well. So content for Engage was also drawn from IRC's Girl Shine. And so we worked quite closely with IRC as they were also releasing the early marriage curriculum that was sort of released later on. So we worked closely with them because parts of the Girl Shine resource can be found within Engage, mostly when it comes to the adolescent girls' life skills sessions. So that is there. And then this was, funded by Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the pilot process officially began in 2021 and lasted until 2023, focusing on Iraq and Somalia. In Iraq, it was conducted in Sinuni and Sinjar in Kurdistan, and it was implemented by NCA only. In Somalia, it was done in Luke among IDPs and host communities, and it was implemented by NCA and our partners, Sedero and Serid. So slightly different approach in each location. But basically, the pilot process took place and was finalized in 2023, with both country offices launching their contextualized version. So the entire time the pilot was taking place, there was a lot of back and forth as teams were implementing the different tools with the different groups. And obviously, at the same time, we were adapting and improving the activities and the information as we went along, so that in the end, we have two very contextualized toolkits for both contexts. You will find, which I can then share later on in the Engage package, there's some learning briefs which basically show the sort of some of the changes that were made within the different tools. So since the launch, both countries have now been implementing Engage within their programs, and we're hoping to see more of that within our specific programming. Next slide. So what does Engage do? Engage aims to empower and provide additional support to adolescent girls, mobilize families and communities whilst improving the capacity of frontline workers. So the main goal of the capacity building component is to increase the skills, the knowledge and the confidence of staff and partners to prevent and respond to child marriage within humanitarian settings. It consists of two main activities: an initial training for facilitators, as well as the ongoing provision of coaching, supervision, and peer support. The main goal of the community outreach activities, which is obviously focused on the prevention side, is to basically prevent child marriage from happening in the future. So these activities seek to achieve this by changing the social norms that enable child marriage to occur in the first place. And then finally, the main goal of the service delivery component is to prevent, mitigate, and respond to child marriage, and obviously minimize the harm that's caused to women and girls who have experienced it or are at risk of experiencing it. So this is the service provision component, basically. Next slide. So in terms of the audience, it's basically for local practitioners and facilitators who want to see their communities make long-lasting changes around issues that affect the well-being of girls, and it guides facilitators in leading conversations and dialogues with various community groups. So this is obviously one of the reasons we wanted to promote this through the AoR, because it might be relevant to other organizations. Next slide. Thank you. So there are three main components. We've got the implementation guide, the curriculum itself, and the training material. So the implementation guide, which is part 1, includes the theory of change, and it's a comprehensive manual that is used to basically guide managers and facilitators in the implementation of the program. Part 2, which is the curriculum, includes the service delivery and the community outreach tools, which are used by community outreach workers and facilitators. And then within that, the curriculum is divided into 2 different components. We've got the community outreach as well as the service provision tools. And these are designed in a way that can be adapted to the context to some extent, and within some flexibility, but also trying to, as much as possible, maintain or retain, let's say, the fidelity of the tools, because obviously if you want to see lasting impact, you need to be sort of true to them to some extent. And then part 3 is the training materials. So here it includes the facilitator guides, the PowerPoint slides, and the different workbooks that can be used to provide the training. And there are 4 modules, which include core components, facilitation skills and considerations, service delivery, and then obviously the community outreach. So the last 2 modules are very practical, and obviously give an opportunity for staff to practice and get feedback from their peers as they do prepare. Next slide. So so we have 2 components. Component 1 within community outreach, as I said earlier, is to prevent child and early forced marriage from happening in the future by changing the social norms that enable it to occur. So these are the specific activities, and within implementation phase 1, you have the caregiver sessions, the religious leaders workshops, and the teachers workshops, and these basically can be facilitated at the same time as the service delivery activities in component 2, and I will show you at the end. There's like a sort of a timeline that gives a detailed view of all of this, because it's clearer that way. And then we have component 2, which is the implementation phase 2, rather, sorry. It's where the community members and opinion leaders come together for a series of community dialogues. And this concludes with the development and implementation of community level social norm change action plans. So that's done afterwards, basically. Because it's basically done after the other workshops. And just to say, the teachers workshops and the religious leaders workshops are optional, because obviously depending on the context, it may or may not be relevant. So NCA obviously, as a faith-based organization, works or has faith-based partners, and so in some contexts we have a sort of we work a lot more closely with faith-based actors, and so it would be more relevant to do this in those situations. In others, it might not be. And within the guide, there's obviously also very clear sort of instructions about, if you are to work with religious leaders, how to go about that, what to be mindful of, and what you need to ensure in terms of existing relationships, let's say, before proceeding. But just to say, those 2 components are optional. Next slide, please. Then we have component 2, which is the service delivery. So here, as I said, it's the main goal is to prevent, mitigate, and respond to CEFM. And so here it really focuses on life skills and training to build assets, create awareness, as well as promote positive coping mechanisms. So the life skills components consist of 3 different tools. We have the adolescent boys' life skills, and then we have adolescent girls' life skills for girls who are unmarried, are at risk of being married, or those who are already married or divorced or widowed. And then we have a focused care specific tool, and that's for girls that are also at imminent risk, already married, divorced, or widowed girls. And the focused care sessions sort of build on the life skills. So the idea is that some girls may need focus care sessions. Not all would necessarily need to or would want to. And then, of course, case management is linked to the program, but it's obviously not part of it. So you need to have an existing case management system in place if you are the service provider, or make sure that you have information about service providers so that you can refer, because there's obviously a strong link between that. So some adolescent girls would need to be referred on to case management if that's what they are seeking. Next slide. Then we have two instruments to measure social norms. So these have been designed to measure changes in perceptions of social norms that may result from the community outreach activities. So we have a story-based group discussion, which is the qualitative measure, as well as the rapid social norm survey, which is obviously trying to measure quantitative data. I won't focus too much on this now just because of time. Next slide. So this is an implementation timeline for all the activities. It looks complicated. It's actually not as complicated as it looks, but it just basically gives you a good idea of when you do the preparation phase. Obviously, that's the initial training, and it's quite an extensive training. So it's a 4-week. The idea is that you would have a 4-week training for staff, getting them ready. And then obviously when you recruit participants, and then it shows you the different components. So there are certain activities that take place at the same time and others that happen afterwards. So I won't spend too much time on this, but obviously I think if I share this PowerPoint, you can have a closer look and go through it. But you can see here that in theory, it's a 12-month program if you were to do it from start to finish and include all the monitoring and evaluation activities. And then that's the final slide, is just to say, yes, that is the link if you would like to learn more about Engage. On that link, you'll find the curriculum itself, the implementation guide, the training material, as well as some promotional videos for Iraq and Somalia that were done. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Laura, and that looks incredibly comprehensive. So thank you for that presentation. I do think we're still running a bit short on time, so I'm going to suggest that we go ahead. If people have questions about the presentation, if you can put them in the chat, and then at the very end, if we have time to go back, we can go back to the questions that were raised on any of our panelists. And Laura, if you want, and the same for you, Chacha, if you want to put your emails in the chat, then people can also get in touch with you bilaterally. And I do think this is something that is of interest, as you say, to the AoR at large, for people who are linked up to programming and are looking, we talk a lot about wanting to do more with adolescent girls. And I think this is really some great materials. And it's good to hear that you've been building on Girls Shine that IRC has developed. And I understand that their Girls Shine curriculum has also developed and evolved since they first started out to now include teen mothers instead of only unmarried and not mother teens, if that makes sense. Anyway, but this is very exciting. I see Clara is giving you some positive feedback. So yes, I know that the AoR has talked about at different times having a small group that works on the issue of forced and early child marriage. So this is also good content to be able to share. So I am now going to go over to Blandine, who is our GBV AoR coordinator in Haiti and who has been working with women-led organizations. She was evacuated from Haiti, so she's not actually there at the moment, but she is still very much in contact and communicating with women-led organizations inside of Haiti. And like I said, since this hasn't been much in the media, it's really good to hear directly from Blandine now. So over to you, Blandine.
Thank you, Jennifer, and hello everyone. For today's presentation, as you say, we are going to focus in the first part to present the key funding from the women-led organization, key funding for the recent assessment. And then in the second part of our presentation, we are going to focus on the overall situation GBV in Haiti. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So as overall objective or the main goal of the mapping that we carried on was about first to assess strength, capacity, and also evaluate challenges that may face women organization in their involvement on GBV prevention and response in Haiti. And as specific objectives here, the first one was, of course, to map local organization, network, initiative, and platform across the country led by women organization, and then try to understand capacity and potential engagement opportunities, and then explore barrier and needs that may face women organization in the involvement in GBV response. And finally, provide some recommendation on how we can improve the support of women organization. Next slide, please. Okay, so based on the finding, we find that 24 women organizations took part of the assessment. In terms of coverage, what we can say here is that the overall department of the country, the 10 department, women-led organizations are intervened around the 10 department around the country, but they are more focused, more concentrated in the West and the Artibonite department that are the both most affected department by the crisis. And then we have to find out about what about the intervention in terms of humanitarian development part. And we find that the vast majority of the organization are involved both in humanitarian and development. And then we have also a small part that are fully involved in development intervention. So after that, we wanted to understand very well about what are the key areas of the intervention. What about the main target group that those organizations are targeted? And then what about human resource profile within all those organizations, and as what come back was that the most organization, the most woman organization are focused, are fully involved in sensitization activities. And then we have some of them, 71% that are involved in the referral of GBV case that identified in the communities. And then some of them, more than half, are involved in psychosocial support and dignity kit distribution, and some organizations are able to provide cash assistance for GBV survivors and other vulnerable women and girls in the community. And some others are involved in legal support. I've also found that 30%, 8 out of 24 organizations are handling temporary shelter, and 2 of them are involved and provide medical support for GBV survivors and other vulnerable people around the community. And then for when it comes to human resource profile, most of the organizations have community volunteers as the most higher profile that they are intervene with. And then we have social worker and also some social agenda can provide psychosocial support and honest support that are able to provide for vulnerable people in the community and survivors. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now the other point was about to find out about what about the typology of all those women organizations. What came out was that nearly to the half, 46% are women group, means that is the small group of women with from 2 to 3 members and commonly working on volunteers basis. And then we have some of them, 30% that are involved in that are working as GBV service provider. They are able to provide sexual reproductive health services. They are also involved in dignity distribution. And this includes as well a temporary shelter strategy. And then we have women rights organizations that are local civil society organizations that focus on empowerment of women. And then we have some organizations that are fully involved on what we can call community-based and youth-led group, and also address women issues. And the last group was about feminist group and collective that adopt or the family-focused feminist organization with feminist value structure and approaches. So next slide, please. Okay, thanks. Now, when it comes to what about intervention within temporary shelter, as we said before, 8 of organizations that are running temporary shelter. And one information what come out is that we only have 25% of them that still have funding to continue the operation in 2024, as the fund will expire in June 2024 in most of the cases. And we wanted also to understand about how all those organizations are able to what about access of humanitarian funding by a women organization. As conclusion here, based on according of the information come out in the assessment, we saw that the vast majority of organizations, 71% of organizations work through their own fund, and only 4 of them have contact with international organization, and only 1 organization state that have direct access to humanitarian funding. And what was the reason of limitation in terms of access to humanitarian funding? Some reason here was, for instance, the lack of knowledge about the donors' funding opportunity, no information about the humanitarian funding schedule, lack of experience in terms of resource mobilization, limitation and flexibility on legal registration at the government level, and also lack of flexibility with legal procedure for contacting with international organizations and donors. Next slide, please. So in terms of gap and needs, we try to organize in categories. So we have 3 categories. Yes, we have capacity strengthening, financial support, and meeting and enhanced platforms. So in terms of need and capacity building, 7 organizations state that they have already received, they have attended minimum standard online training in 2023 by International Rescue Committee, with the coordination with the regional and REGA team from LECRO. And then women organizations state that they are interested to be trained in some area, in some, they need to build their capacity in some area, as the community-based protection and GBV, women empowerment and leadership approaches, GBV case management, and how to deal with data protection when it comes to incident with GBV and data protection, and then how to develop very well a proposal writing and resource mobilization as competency. And then as financial and support and opportunity needs, as they said that they're facing some issues with limitation of flexibility with contracting with donors and international organizations. They would like some maybe to have access for some modality from some flexibility modality for funding as sub-granting and concordia, and so that they can be able to support transportation fee for the referral of case in the city, to be able to continue the development information, education and communication material, and then also periodical safety audit and community mitigation plan, dignity distribution, cash voucher assistance for survivor, and continue awareness raising activity, and also to be able to support operational cost and functional of the organization. And then they would also like to be involved more in meeting facilitation and also take part in participation and inclusion of decision-making platforms such as Humanitarian country team meeting, and also GBV and also cluster meeting to be able to be part of those who are taking decision around all this platform. Slide, please. And in terms of recommendation, we have two blocks of coordination, one block for cluster coordination at the country level, regional level, at the global level as well, and also recommendation toward donors. So as a cluster coordination recommendation here, it was about to adapt cluster-specific tools and approach so that a woman-led organization can be able to, so that all that tools will be more accessible for women organization, and also, for instance, to translate some documentation in local language Creole for the word dissemination, and then encourage the participation in existing humanitarian and development network, advocacy, partnership, and funding model, as they said before, and also increase engagement of women organizations. As for donors' recommendation, it was about recommend to invest more in capacity building around gender mainstreaming, gender, GBV risk mitigation across sectors, and then also, of course, offer flexible crisis-related funding and contingency budget, invest as well in supporting women collective action and women group, also regularly disseminate information around funding priorities, modalities, and opportunities. Also simplify as possible funding application process and requirement. Those who like to have information in the language if possible, and then provide alternative funding modalities, as we said before, sub-granting or other alternative modality that are possible for all those organizations. And we are going to continue now with the brief overview of what is going on in terms of access to the next slide, please. We are going to continue now on what is going on access to the services in overall coordination, also about perspective and the situation of the funding. So what we can see is
just
that,
so you know, your time actually is finished. We have a 5-minute delay from Anastasica because she's landing in an airplane. So as soon as she joins, we'll need to move over to her. So just know you have like 5 minutes left. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I was saying that the number of IDP continued to increase in Haiti due to the insecurity, and then more and more several GBV risk across internally displaced sites, and also a coping mechanism due to the acute food insecurity in Haiti, and then what is and then in terms of GBV reported cases, what come out from the Q1 report was that the GBV incident has drastically increased 5 times more from February to March, and 75% of the cases was sexual violence. We also have physical assault, and of course emotional violence and psychological case. And in terms of regarding access to the clinical management of all those rape cases, only 25% of rape cases have received medical assistance within the normal time after the incident reported, due to the lack of medication, also for lack of transportation fare. And last slide, please. It was about perspective. So right now we are trying to translate the referred pathway that have been developed in the local language Creole, and also print poster for the service delivery point, and also develop leaflet to include as item on dignity kit distribution, for instance, and also for worldly distribution among all the humanitarian actors, the community, and also involved in the SOP development. As temporary shelter status, UNFPA are supported 10 temporary shelter right now, but we still have 16 that still need to be supported in terms of cash assistance, transportation fare, hot meal for those who are received in all those shelter, and then a small drugstore and dignity kit as well. And in terms of medical assistance in health facility, 24 health facilities are supported by UNFPA, and then but it's not yet sufficient as other communities are not yet covered by the post-rape kit. And also we are looking for try to support additional medical exams, so that service will be totally free of charge in the health facility. And also when we are facing limitation access, undertake mobile clinic, integrated mobile clinic for sexual reproductive health and GBV as well. And as funding situation, the GBV subcluster are fully funded by the BHA funding, and we also have other funding like Canada, SEF, and we are on the process with the Global Fund for GBV and HIV integration. And we would like to improve our advocacy perspective, and I would like to take this opportunity to really thank the global and regional level for their support in terms of visibility and advocacy effort to support Haiti risk prevention and coordination. So I'm going to stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're actually waiting for Anita Zita, who's going to present on her experience of HNPW, and she seems to be landing in Juba. So I think her flight's a little bit delayed. So if there is a question or a comment for Blandine, we'll take one question now. I haven't seen any for Blandine in the chat, but thank you very much for the presentation.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
Hi, Jennifer. I sent one question.
Oh, okay. Why don't you just say it then?
Okay, thank you very much. So, first of all, thank you very much for this presentation. I would like to know a little bit more about the political landscape and how this can impact and influence, the services or the actions that you are planning there. So are the humanitarian groups allowed to work in the country? How is the situation? It has been, what is the challenge to make sure that the funds will reach the grassroots communities and women-led organizations, and how are functioning the centers for gender-based violence and sexual reproductive health and rights? So we are very much interested in starting collaborating more with the Haiti situation. So after that, I also would like to have more conversations about it. Thank you very much.
Can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. I am Alessandra Nilu. I am the External Relations Director for IPPF in Acro region, and I am the former General Coordinator of Justice in Brazil. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I could hear your Brazilian accent. Okay. Blandine, I know that was a huge question, but do you want to answer part of it? And then you can also have a bilateral conversation. If you put your email in the chat, then Blandine can get in touch with you directly also.
Okay, for sure, I will share in my email on the chat. Can I give some element for responding? We are coming back later.
No, if you want to go ahead and start and answer part, it was a big question, but if you want to answer part of it now, because we're still waiting for Ana Tizita. So
Okay.
you can go ahead and answer. Yep.
Okay, we will continue bilaterally, but I will provide some element as response. Of course, in Haiti right now, women-led organization really need to be supported. But as you say, you are facing many challenges in terms of access and also insecurity. But however, with the access group coordinated by OCHA and intercluster activity are carried on. Even the security is not really easy, but they are trying to provide services for survivors and also for other vulnerable people. And I think it's a good idea to be able to support women-led organization, and there are ways to maybe to see how we can better do that. And people are obviously on the tech activity. For instance, for the workshop, they are organized workshop in the other department. Or when it comes to cash transfer, we are able to do that. Or also, many activities are already carried out in the country. And since we are waiting the MSS, maybe we will be facing new challenges, but at the level of the protection and cluster level, we have undertook some training with the coordination with OCHA to facilitate and to organize the mission that we are waiting for. And we can continue the discussion bilateral to go more deeply in terms of more response. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Blandine. And I think, as Colm said, baggage can take some time in Juba. So I am going to go back to, there's a bunch of questions for Lara. There's one, I don't know if you saw them all in the chat, Lara, but if you want to answer part of one anyway. There is one about if you're using an intergenerational approach, or is it limited to those below 18? I don't know if you saw all the questions. Maybe you can choose which ones to respond to now, and then also get back bilaterally. And the question was asked by, can you introduce yourself from UNFPA, last name Barge? I don't know what your first name is. The person who asked the questions in the chat? You're muted. Anyway, Laura, maybe you can
Yes.
start answering. Yeah.
Sure, I can see it. Just to warn you all, I've taken over childcare, so my baby might be in the background screaming. I'm trying to get all of your attention. But basically, in terms of the first question about the intergenerational, I mean, the sessions or the tools are specific to adolescent girls and adolescent boys, but yeah, the focus is on adolescent girls. We have caregiver sessions, so in theory, it could come up through that, because obviously we're working with the mothers and female community members who may themselves obviously have been married either previously as children or as part of forced marriage, but not directly. Let's say we don't necessarily deal with that directly. In terms of the second question, which was that the strategies fall under an individual level. How do we deal with it from an institutional? So obviously we are implementing GBV programs, and this fits within a wider GBV program. And in some contexts, sorry again about the noise, in some contexts we are obviously dealing with that through other types of our programming, but also because there is such a strong focus on community outreach and working with religious leaders and other influential community members, there is also scope to influence, let's say, at that level as well. And then the final question, I think, was related to how this complements other approaches. So Girl Shine, as I already mentioned, this was linked, it is linked, and we've worked and adapted from that. So it does complement that. And in terms of SAS, I mean, in some contexts we are implementing, sorry, Amalia, stop. Sorry.
No worries. We're sorry to put you in this situation.
No, not at all. So yeah, in some contexts we are implementing different parts. So we do implement SASA in some contexts. Whether or not they directly link together, I mean, I don't see why we couldn't, because obviously a lot of it is community outreach and it links closely. So we could look at that if it's a very specific context. But just to the person who asked that question, I'm happy to have a discussion when I'm not running around after a 1-year-old. So apologies again.
We'll share the emails to you. And we were told that Anna Tazita is arriving, but I don't know. Shiva, do you see her on the screen? She said she's joining. I don't actually see her here yet. Okay, so maybe we'll ask if there's a question for Chacha. It doesn't have to be written in the chat. If you want to take off your...
Anna is here now.
Oh, Anna's here. Okay, sorry, Chacha. I'm going to go over to Anna. Anna, welcome. I'm assuming you're flying into Juba. I could be wrong. Maybe you're flying somewhere else. But we're glad you could join for the last... we'll give you 10 minutes, and people might jump off in 7 minutes, but I won't. So I already introduced you, so people know that you're one of the women-led organizations that is taking on, or you're the women-led organization taking on coordination in South Sudan. So over to you on HNPW. Your impressions. You're on mute, Anna.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay. Yeah,
thank you so much for being patient with me. Our flight got delayed, and that's why I'm trying to join late. Flying back to Juba. Yeah, I think I have been introduced already. So yeah. I'm just going to share briefly about my engagement at the HNPW 2024. As a women's rights organization who is also doing co-leading at the state level and national level right now, I mean now for the GBV subcluster in South Sudan, I was able to present about the achievements that we have gotten, the good things about the involvement of women's rights organization in a cluster coordination and mechanism in one of the panels where we talked about how meaningfully women's rights organizations will be engaged in the cluster system, especially in coordination, so that decisions, they can be involved in decision-making spaces, they can be involved in contributing to providing even data in the GBV AoR or in even the MI system, and also the meaningful partnership in terms of quality funding that needs to be given to the women's rights organization, because at the end of the day, it's not about, even if you give me, if you give this women's rights organization a lot of money, but do they have the power, a decision-making space that they can express themselves? So I think it's something that we also talked about, and I want to say, of course, the GBV subcluster is doing that greatly, and I also did say the aspect of engaging these projects, I mean, engagement of the women's organizations should not only be in the GB subcluster. Yes, we give credit to the GB subcluster because they have really shown that a UN cluster, or I mean, a cluster system can take in a local women's rights organization to lead in the clusters. But then other clusters will also embrace that so that it can become a collective effort, because if only one cluster is doing it, it will only limit, because if only one organization is sitting there, what of other thousands or other 50 organizations that can meaningfully contribute to the cluster system, but they are not there. And those were the engagement that we also really shared widely. And I want to say I'm very happy that at least most of the cluster members, especially one of the sessions in the morning, they were there and they were able to take a good note of what was really shared. And I want to say it was a great week full of sharing, but basically we are sharing about how the GBV subcluster have really supported women's rights organization. You know, even right now, like we have also an women's rights organization who are at the global level. I remember from South Sudan and I think Nigeria or Yemen, Fatuma, I think, right, and Gloria, which is a very good step. But now, what are other clusters doing is what also we are talking about. Because if we are talking about localization should not be only one way, but should be a collective effort so that we can achieve it at the end of the day. But if it is only one cluster doing, other clusters are not doing, I think that is also still a gap, which we are really advocating for it at the HNP. And we hope that the voices are heard, and giving the example of the GBV subcluster being a pillar in this GBV subcluster been piloting this project with the support from BHA, and of course through our partners like Trocare. We want to say let all other organizations come in and let all other partners come in. So we just want to say that's what we were able to share. But I'm very optimistic that in the next few years, hopefully, if the collective voices continues, I think more clusters will come in. Because one thing also was that the head of clusters was there, if I'm not mistaken, right, Jennifer? And she was able to really acknowledge all the challenges that women's rights and even local actors are going through in terms of the cluster system, where sometimes we are not engaged in meaningful partnership, we are not engaged in decision-making spaces. And, you know, looking at the global setting, you're looking at the cluster setting, that's where decisions are made. So we want to say that more clusters need to embrace the aspect of bringing in local actors, but more special women's rights organizations, because these are neglected sector of the organization, and also their voices need to be heard, and they are fast respondents in most cases. So that is what I will share briefly to you all. And if there are follow-up questions, you're highly welcome. And if there are specific also comments, they are welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, just to say, Anatazita was referring to Marina, who is the Secretariat of the Global Cluster Coordination Group. And within the Global Cluster Coordination Group, we do have a task team on localization, where we've had webinars in each of the language areas: Arabic, French, Spanish, and French, German, Spanish, and Arabic, with the different local organizations on co-coordination and leadership. And they actually did an HNPW session, which was the first week of activities when everything was online, and you can also access that recording. It was moderated by Joyce from the Child Protection AoR and was quite dynamic. So if there, we actually, Anatazita made it end exactly at 5, so you can jump off. I know some of you have other calls, especially those of you who are starting your day rather than ending it. But if anyone wants to make a comment about their experience at the localization sessions at HNPW, or if you want to ask a question to Anna, we can stay on a few more minutes to respond to those inquiries or comments. So please just take off your mic and ask the question if you have a question. You can also put questions in the chat if you want to talk to somebody later, but we understand if you need to get off. So any questions or comments? I don't see anyone taking off their mic or raising their hand. But
Hello, Jennifer, can you hear me?
Yes, please, go ahead. And if you can introduce yourself first so everyone knows, that's great.
Okay, Dorcas from Nigeria. Based in Maiduguri to be precise. So I kindly request if I can have your email address. I have some questions that I want to ask, but it will be better for me to ask via email instead of putting it on the chat box, if that's okay. Thank you.
So Anna, if you can put your email in the chat. Also, just to say, we do have a group that's meeting with co-coordinators who are women-led organizations or community organizations that meet, I think, monthly to talk about their experiences as a peer-to-peer learning. So that's also an opportunity. And the GBV AoR is going to be with Gloria and Fatima. Fatima, you might know her from Nigeria, are going to be creating a localization task team within the GBV AoR, and they're finalizing the work plan, and that will be co-coordinated also with CARE. I noticed that we have a participant from CARE Egypt on the call. So yeah, feel free to also put in any other questions, because we're about to get off, but we do look at the chat to see if we need to follow up with anyone. And yeah, we're excited about the work being done with women's rights and women-led organizations. And just to say, the official definition has now been endorsed by the principals within the Interagency Standing Committee. So there's no longer an excuse to not track women-led organizations. And actually, I was going to ask Chacha, when he talked about the 40% local organizations participating in the AoRs in Ethiopia, how many of those, if they're tracking specifically women-led organizations, because we are doing that now in our annual survey to find out not just how many local organizations, but how many of them are women-led. So we're trying to do a better job on tracking funding as well as participation. And I think one of the points that Anatazita made was that we also want to look at meaningful participation within the AoRs, in terms of our own work with gender-based violence, and looking at you know, women-led organizations who are part of SAGs, steering advisory groups that are running or co-chairing different task teams if they exist, that it doesn't only need to be co-coordination in order to take on leadership roles. And of course, as Anna also said, this is a two-way relationship, and we clearly all benefit from the participation and the leadership and decision-making, etc. So I think there was a lot also that we learned. It's too bad you missed it, Anna, but we will be sharing the recording on YouTube. But there was a lot talked about in Haiti, where the survey was just done, and Sudan also recently did a survey with women-led organizations, and Colm, who's on this call, I'm going to put you on the spot, Colm, who's from our policy advocacy reference group. We've asked if he's from Trocaire, and we've asked if he could help Sudan looking at how to maybe highlight some of the points that came out of the survey. And I think it'd be great to also do that with Haiti. You know, I think we can, there's a lot of good material now that we can put together and share widely the learning. So thank you all for waiting 5 extra minutes. Thank you, Anna, for jumping on this call after your flight. And I hope you didn't get too nervous trying to get on the call. But we appreciate your efforts, and thank you, Chacha. Sorry we didn't get to you for questions, but I hope you're able to address the ones in the chat. And everyone, you had emails in the chat of everyone, so you can ask more questions. And just so everyone knows, we are having our annual coordinator event in Nairobi starting on the 10th. And so we will be working together with the other AORs and with protection. And localization is one of the issues that we're addressing, as well as frontline response, cross-cutting issues, a number of different topics that we will be hopefully producing some kind of information that can be shared widely after that in terms of having discussions among the different coordinators. So thank you all for joining, and we will be in touch with you for the next call. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Jennifer.